In the vast expanse of the galaxy, Earth was just another dot on the map, a small, insignificant planet overshadowed by the might of the Galactic Empire. For decades, humanity had lived under the shadow of this interstellar superpower. The Empire controlled trade routes, dictated laws, and imposed its will across countless star systems. Humans were no strangers to hardship. They had endured centuries of struggle even before venturing into space. But now, living under the Empire's thumb felt different, like being trapped in a cage with invisible bars. At first, it seemed like a fair deal. When humanity joined the galactic community, they were promised prosperity, advanced technology, access to resources from distant planets, and protection against hostile alien species. All these sounded too good to pass up, and for a while, things worked out. People back on Earth marveled at the wonders brought by interstellar cooperation. Cities grew taller, economies boomed, and life expectancy soared. It felt like humanity had finally taken its place among the stars. But nothing comes without a price. Slowly but surely, cracks began to show in the Empire's promises. Trade agreements turned exploitative. Resources mined from Earth's moon and nearby asteroids flowed straight into Imperial coffers, leaving little for the people who called those rocks home. Cultural exchanges became one-sided, with human traditions fading as the Empire pushed its own customs onto every world it touched. Worst of all, there were whispers of military incursions, Imperial fleets appearing uninvited near Earth's borders, testing how far they could push before someone said, "Enough." For years, Earth's leaders stayed silent. They told themselves it wasn't worth risking war. After all, what chance did humanity have against an empire that spanned thousands of light years? Better to swallow pride than face annihilation. But then came the incident that changed everything. It started innocently enough. A routine patrol detected unusual activity near the asteroid belt, a region rich in rare minerals and officially recognized as part of Earth's sovereign territory. At first, officials assumed it was just another survey mission. Maybe the Empire wanted to map potential mining sites or study geological formations. No big deal, right? Wrong. As days passed, reports trickled in confirming something far more sinister. An entire fleet of Imperial mining vessels had moved in, extracting valuable resources without so much as a courtesy call. Worse still, they weren't using standard extraction methods. Their equipment left scars on the landscape, destabilizing orbits and endangering nearby colonies. It was theft, plain and simple, and done with such arrogance that it left everyone fuming. News of the violation spread quickly. Social media erupted with outrage. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, demanding action. Even scientists and engineers, usually apolitical, spoke out about the environmental damage caused by the Empire's greed. For the first time in years, humanity found itself united, not by hope, but by anger. Behind closed doors, Earth's leaders scrambled to respond. Representatives from every continent convened in secret, forming what would later be known as the Terran Accord. This wasn't just another meeting, it was a turning point. Gone were the days of fractured nations squabbling over petty differences. Now they stood together as one voice, speaking for all of humanity. Hours turned into days as debates raged. Some argued for diplomacy, suggesting they send envoys to negotiate peace. Others demanded immediate retaliation, proposing strikes against the mining operation. In the end, cooler heads prevailed, but only barely. Instead of rushing into battle, they decided to take a stand in a way no one expected. On a crisp morning, the Terran Accord addressed not only Earth, but the entire galaxy. Through broadcasts transmitted across subspace frequencies, their message reached every corner of known space. The announcement was simple yet bold. Effective immediately, all vessels, personnel, when and entities affiliated with the Galactic Empire are hereby prohibited from entering Terran-controlled space. The words hung heavy in the air, echoing through homes, offices, and starships alike. On Earth, reactions varied wildly. Crowds cheered in the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans. Families huddled around screens, tears streaming down their faces as they realized history was unfolding before their eyes. Not everyone celebrated, though. Some worried this declaration would provoke the Empire into attacking. Others questioned whether humanity truly had the strength to back up such a bold statement. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the Galactic Empire, shockwaves rippled through the corridors of power. High-ranking officials stared at monitors displaying Earth's broadcast, disbelief etched onto their faces. Or how dare these primitives defy them? For generations, the Empire had ruled supreme, crushing dissent wherever it arose. Yet here was Earth, a mere speck in the cosmos, daring to draw a line in the sand. Reactions varied among the Empire's elite. Military commanders pounded tables, demanding swift retribution. Diplomats whispered warnings of unintended consequences, urging caution. One thing was certain: Earth's declaration couldn't go unanswered. Whether through force or negotiation, the Empire would make sure humanity paid for its insolence. As tensions mounted, ordinary citizens on both sides braced for what might come next. Farmers looked up at the sky, wondering if today would be the day alien ships descended upon their fields. Factory workers tightened bolts with trembling hands, knowing their products might soon fuel a war effort. Parents tucked children into bed, praying for peace even as fear gnawed at their hearts. And so, the stage was set. Humanity had thrown down the gauntlet, challenging the most powerful force in the galaxy. Would this act of defiance spark a new era of freedom or lead to Earth's destruction? Only time would tell, but one truth remained undeniable. The days of submission were over. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it head-on, united as never before. The declaration sent shockwaves across Earth. But it wasn't just a moment of triumph, it was a call to action. Humanity had drawn a line in the stars, and now it had to prepare for whatever came next. The Terran Accord wasted no time. Within hours of the broadcast, emergency meetings were convened, plans were drafted, and resources were mobilized. In every corner of the planet buzzed with activity as governments, corporations, and ordinary citizens rallied together for what could be the fight of their lives. At the heart of this whirlwind was a question that weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Could humanity really stand up to the Galactic Empire? For decades, Earth had been a minor player in the galactic arena, overshadowed by civilizations far older and more advanced. But beneath the surface, something remarkable had been brewing. Hidden away in secret facilities, tucked deep underground or floating silently in orbit, humanity had been quietly building its strength. Now those efforts would finally see the light of day. One of the first steps was to rally the people. Leaders understood that unity would be their greatest weapon. Across cities and towns, the public addresses filled the airwaves. Speakers reminded listeners of everything humanity had overcome: wars, pandemics, climate crises, and urged them to channel that resilience once again. "We've faced challenges before," one leader declared during a televised speech, "and every time we've risen stronger. This is no different. We are not alone. We are Earth." The message resonated deeply. Factories switched from producing consumer goods to manufacturing weapons and supplies. Engineers worked around the clock, tweaking designs and testing prototypes. Farmers increased crop yields to ensure food security, while teachers educated students about resource conservation. Even artists joined the effort, creating murals and songs that inspired hope and courage. It was as if the entire planet had transformed into a single, a living organism, all its parts working in harmony toward a shared goal. But perhaps the most awe-inspiring developments came from Project Helios Forge. Few outside top-level circles knew much about it, but rumors had circulated for years. Some called it humanity's ace in the hole, others dismissed it as science fiction. What they didn't know was how close to reality those whispers actually were. Deep within secure compounds, teams of scientists and engineers unveiled technologies that seemed almost magical. Massive orbital defense platforms rose above Earth's atmosphere, each bristling with energy weapons capable of vaporizing enemy ships in seconds. Sleek warships emerged from hidden dry docks, their angular designs cutting through space like knives. These vessels weren't just fast. They were powered by engines based on principles so advanced they defied conventional physics. And then there was the crown jewel, an experimental cloaking device derived from reverse-engineered alien artifacts. With it, entire fleets could vanish from sight, striking without warning and retreating before the enemy even knew what hit them. Of course, none of this happened overnight. Behind the scenes, countless sacrifices were made. Families said goodbye to loved ones who volunteered for dangerous missions. Workers labored tirelessly, often going days without sleep. Resources were stretched thin, forcing difficult decisions about where to allocate funding. Yet despite these challenges, morale remained high. People believed in the cause, not because they wanted war, but because they wanted freedom. They wanted a future where humanity could chart its own course, free from the shadow of oppression. As preparations continued, debates raged among Earth's leaders. Not everyone agreed that declaring the prohibition had been the right move. Some argued it was reckless, pointing out the sheer size and power of the Galactic Empire. What happens if they reelect? One official asked during a heated council session. Do we have the firepower to match them? Or are we signing our own death warrant? Others countered that backing down now would only make things worse. If we show weakness, they'll crush us anyway. Another shot back. At least this way, we go down fighting. Or maybe, just maybe, we win. These discussions weren't limited to government chambers. Ordinary citizens weighed in too, sharing opinions online, at dinner tables, and in community gatherings. Social media lit up with arguments both for and against the decision. Some posts praised the bravery of Earth's leaders, calling them heroes. Others expressed fear, urging caution over confrontation. Amidst the noise, one sentiment stood out. Whatever happened next, humanity couldn't afford to be divided. United, they might stand a chance. Divided, they were doomed. Meanwhile, the Galactic Empire watched and waited. Their initial shock gave way to anger, and then to calculation. High-ranking officials gathered in opulent citadels, poring over intelligence reports and strategizing their next move. Military commanders pushed for immediate retaliation, arguing that Earth's defiance needed to be crushed swiftly and decisively. If we let them get away with this, one general growled during a briefing, then every other species will think they can do the same. Diplomats, however, urged restraint. They pointed out that humanity's sudden display of strength suggested they might have more tricks up their sleeves. Rumors swirled about classified projects and hidden arsenals. Was Earth bluffing, or did they genuinely possess the means to defend themselves? No one could say for sure, but the uncertainty gnawed at the Empire's confidence. Back on Earth, preparations reached a fever pitch. Training programs intensified as soldiers honed their skills in simulated battles. Pilots practiced dogfighting maneuvers in zero gravity, while ground troops rehearsed urban combat scenarios. Civilian volunteers signed up for emergency response teams, ready to assist in case of invasion or disaster. Even children played their part, on organizing fundraisers and writing letters of support to frontline workers. Despite the chaos, moments of humanity shone through. Neighbors helped neighbors, strangers became friends, and communities pulled together like never before. In parks and squares, impromptu gatherings sprang up, with people singing songs, sharing stories, and finding solace in each other's company. It was a reminder that, even in the darkest times, hope could still bloom. As weeks turned into months, the sense of anticipation grew palpable. Everyone knew the calm wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the Empire would act, and when it did, humanity would need to be ready. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Failure meant subjugation, or worse. Success meant survival, dignity, and the chance to forge a new destiny among the stars. For now, Earth held its breath, was steeling itself for the storm ahead. The galaxy watched, waiting to see whether this small, stubborn planet could truly defy the odds, or whether it would crumble under the weight of its own ambition. One thing was certain: whatever happened next, history was about to be made. The tension between Earth and the Galactic Empire had been building for months, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before something gave way. That moment came sooner than anyone expected, and when it did, it changed everything. It started with a single Imperial scout ship, a sleek, menacing vessel that slipped silently into Terran space, ignoring all warnings to turn back. The crew aboard claimed they were conducting routine reconnaissance, but no one believed them. Humanity's leaders saw it for what it truly was: a test. The Empire wanted to see how far Earth would go to enforce its bold declaration. Would humanity fire first, or would they fold under pressure? For hours, the scout ship lingered near the edge of Earth's solar system, just close enough to provoke but not quite crossing the line into outright aggression. Military commanders debated their options. Some argued for restraint, suggesting they escort the ship out of Terran space peacefully. Others pushed for immediate action, warning that hesitation would only embolden the Empire further. In the end, the decision was made, not by politicians, but by those on the front lines who understood the stakes better than anyone else. What followed was a brief yet devastating skirmish. Using experimental targeting systems developed as part of Project Helios Forge, Earth's defense forces locked onto the scout ship with pinpoint accuracy. Before the Imperial crew could react, energy beams lanced through space, striking the vessel with lethal precision. Within seconds, the scout ship was reduced to floating debris, its wreckage drifting silently in the void. The message was clear: Earth meant business. When news of the incident reached the Galactic Empire, outrage rippled through its ranks. High-ranking officials convened in emergency sessions, their faces red with fury. For centuries, the Empire had operated under the assumption that lesser species would bow to their will without question. Now, here was Earth, a planet they had dismissed as insignificant, daring to strike back. It was an affront to their authority, one they couldn't ignore. In response, the Empire deployed a massive armada to the edge of Terran space. Hundreds of warships, each bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire cities, formed a blockade around Earth's borders. Their message was equally clear: comply or face annihilation. But humanity wasn't about to back down. If anything, the arrival of the Armada only strengthened their resolve. Leaders addressed the public once again, reminding them of why they had taken this stand in the first place. "This isn't just about us," one official said during a televised speech. "It's about every civilization that's ever been bullied, exploited, or erased by the Empire. We're fighting for them too." Behind the scenes, strategists worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable clash. They knew they couldn't win a head-on battle against such overwhelming numbers. Instead, they turned to unconventional tactics, ones designed to exploit the Empire's arrogance and overconfidence. At the heart of these plans was Earth's secret weapon, stealth technology. Derived from reverse-engineered alien artifacts, the cloaking devices allowed ships to vanish from sight, rendering them invisible to even the most advanced sensors. Small teams of fighters equipped with these systems infiltrated the Imperial Armada under cover of darkness. Their mission was simple but dangerous: disable critical systems, sow chaos among enemy ranks, and retreat before being detected. The operation unfolded in stages, each phase more daring than the last. Stealth fighters darted between Imperial vessels, planting EMP charges on key targets. When detonated, these devices disrupted power grids, shutting down engines and communication arrays. Other teams hacked into onboard computers, feeding false data to confuse commanders and create panic among the crews. Entire squadrons found themselves chasing phantom signals, wasting fuel and ammunition, while real threats slipped past unnoticed. Despite their success, the operation wasn't without cost. Several stealth fighters were detected and destroyed, their pilots sacrificing themselves to ensure the mission's completion. Back on Earth, families mourned their losses, but there was no time for grief. Every victory, no matter how small, brought humanity one step closer to survival. As the battle raged on, cracks began to form within the Imperial ranks. Commanders clashed over strategy, accusing each other of incompetence. Troops grew restless, unsure whether their superiors truly had control of the situation. Rumors spread of mutinies aboard some ships, though nothing could be confirmed. What was certain, however, was that the Empire's aura of invincibility was beginning to crumble. On Earth, the mood shifted from fear to cautious optimism. People watched live feeds of the battle, cheering as reports of successful strikes poured in. Social media buzzed with excitement, memes celebrating humanity's ingenuity going viral overnight. Even skeptics who had doubted Earth's chances found themselves caught up in the wave of hope sweeping across the planet. Yet amidst the celebration, questions lingered. Was this really enough? Could humanity hold off an empire that spanned thousands of star systems? And what would happen if reinforcements arrived? However, these uncertainties weighed heavily on everyone's minds, tempering their joy with a healthy dose of realism. In the end, the battle ended inconclusively. Neither side committed fully to all-out war, choosing instead to retreat and regroup. The Empire withdrew its armada, unwilling to risk further losses so far from home. Earth, meanwhile, tightened its defenses, knowing the reprieve wouldn't last long. Though the immediate threat had passed, the psychological impact of the skirmish reverberated throughout the galaxy. For the first time, the Galactic Empire realized it might have underestimated humanity and perhaps overestimated its own invincibility. As whispers of rebellion spread through oppressed civilizations, Earth emerged not just as a defender of its own borders, but as a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Back on the blue-green orb at the center of it all, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be under the circumstances. Soldiers reunited with loved ones, sharing stories of narrow escapes and hard-won victories. Engineers analyzed data from the battle, looking for ways to improve their technology. Leaders planned for the future, knowing the fight was far from over. And so, humanity stood tall, battered but unbroken. They had faced the storm and survived. But deep down, they knew the hardest battles were still to come. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what Earth would do next. The aftermath of the skirmish left both Earth and the Galactic Empire in a precarious position. Neither side had emerged victorious, but the balance of power had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. For humanity, It was a moment of cautious triumph, a chance to catch its breath and reassess its strategy. For the Empire, it was a wake-up call that shook its foundations. The galaxy watched with bated breath as tensions simmered, unsure whether diplomacy or destruction would follow. In the days after the battle, neutral parties stepped forward to mediate. Representatives from smaller civilizations, those who had long lived under the Empire's shadow, offered to broker talks between Earth and the Imperial leadership. These intermediaries weren't powerful enough to sway either side, but they hoped their efforts might prevent further bloodshed. After all, a full-scale war would devastate not just Earth and the Empire, but countless other worlds caught in the crossfire. Earth's leaders agreed to participate, though reluctantly. They knew diplomacy was risky. Every moment spent talking was a moment the Empire could use to regroup and plan its next move. Still, they couldn't ignore the opportunity to expose the Empire's true nature to the rest of the galaxy. If they played their cards right, these negotiations could become another battlefield, one where words carried as much weight as weapons. The talks took place aboard a neutral space station orbiting a distant star. It was an ancient structure, built by a civilization long gone, its corridors echoing with the ghosts of past conflicts. Delegations from both sides arrived separately, their ships docking in silence. No handshakes were exchanged, no pleasantries shared. The air was thick with mistrust, each party eyeing the other like predators circling prey. At first, progress was slow. The Empire demanded Earth retract its prohibition order and submit to Imperial oversight once again. In return, they promised leniency, a vague assurance that humanity wouldn't face severe punishment for its defiance. Earth's representatives listened patiently, their faces impassive masks hiding the storm of emotions brewing beneath the surface. When it was their turn to speak, they refused to back down. "We didn't start this," one of Earth's delegates said firmly during the opening session. "You violated our borders, exploited our resources, and treated us like subjects rather than equals. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're demanding respect." The statement drew murmurs from the audience, composed mostly of observers from neutral factions. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uneasy glances. The Empire's envoys bristled at the accusation, countering with thinly veiled threats. "You underestimate the consequences of your actions," one of them warned. "If you continue down this path, you'll bring ruin upon yourselves." Despite the hostility, cracks began to form in the Empire's facade. As discussions dragged on, shocking revelations came to light. Humanity presented evidence, not just of recent violations, but of decades of systemic abuse across the galaxy. Secret documents, intercepted communications, and first-hand testimonies painted a damning picture of the Empire's operations. Entire star systems had been destabilized, their populations reduced to poverty, while resources flowed into Imperial coffers. Cultures had been erased, replaced by homogenized traditions imposed from above. And behind it all lay a web of corruption and greed that stretched to the highest levels of power. These disclosures sent ripples through the assembled delegations. Neutral parties whispered among themselves, horrified by what they were hearing. Even some members of the Imperial delegation seemed shaken, though they tried to hide it behind stoic expressions. For the first time, the Empire's carefully crafted image of benevolent rulership was crumbling. Back on Earth, the revelations sparked outrage and inspiration. News outlets broadcast the findings to every corner of the planet, fueling protests and rallies. People took to the streets, holding signs that read, "No more oppression," and "Stand with Earth." Artists created murals depicting scenes of rebellion, while musicians penned anthems celebrating humanity's fight for justice. And the message was clear: Earth wasn't alone in the struggle. Countless others across the galaxy yearned for freedom, and now they saw a glimmer of hope in humanity's defiance. Meanwhile, internal divisions within the Empire grew more pronounced. Factions vied for control, each blaming the other for the current crisis. Military hardliners called for immediate retaliation, insisting that only brute force could restore order. Moderates argued for compromise, fearing that prolonged conflict would weaken the Empire's grip on its territories. Behind closed doors, whispers of rebellion spread among lower-ranking officers and civilians alike. Could Earth's stand inspire others to rise up against their oppressors? As the negotiations dragged on, humanity seized the opportunity to forge new alliances. Delegates reached out to oppressed civilizations, offering support and solidarity. Some were hesitant, wary of drawing the Empire's wrath, but others saw potential in joining forces with Earth. Together, they formed a coalition aimed at resisting imperial tyranny. A loose network of planets, colonies, and independent groups united by a common goal. This newfound unity gave humanity strength, but also responsibility. Leaders understood that they couldn't simply declare war on the Empire without considering the broader implications. Every decision they made would ripple across the galaxy, affecting billions of lives. It was a heavy burden to bear, but one they accepted willingly. By the time the talks concluded, no formal agreement had been reached. Both sides remained entrenched in their positions, unwilling to yield. Yet something important had changed. The Empire's dominance, once thought unshakable, now seemed fragile. Its grip on the galaxy was slipping, undermined by its own hubris and humanity's unwavering resolve. For Earth, the negotiations served another purpose: buying time. While diplomats sparred over terms and conditions, engineers worked tirelessly to improve their technology. Scientists analyzed data from the recent skirmish, identifying weaknesses in the Empire's defenses. Military strategists planned for every possible scenario, preparing for the day when diplomacy failed and conflict resumed. And so, life on Earth continued, marked by a mix of determination and uncertainty. Families went about their daily routines, finding comfort in small moments of normalcy. Farmers tended their fields, when knowing their crops might soon feed soldiers on the front lines. Teachers educated students about history, emphasizing lessons of resilience and courage. Even children played their part, organizing fundraisers and writing letters of encouragement to troops stationed in orbit. Yet beneath the surface, anxiety lingered. Everyone knew the truce wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the Empire would make its move, and when it did, humanity would need to be ready. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Failure meant subjugation, or worse. Success meant survival, dignity, and the chance to forge a new destiny among the stars. For now, Earth held its breath, steeling itself for whatever came next. The galaxy watched, waiting to see whether this small, stubborn planet could truly defy the odds, or whether it would crumble under the weight of its own ambition. One thing was certain: whatever happened next, history was about to be made. The final chapter of humanity's defiance against the Galactic Empire unfolded not with a single decisive battle, but through a series of events that reshaped the galaxy forever. Earth had proven itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most powerful force in the cosmos, and now it faced the daunting task of turning its bold declaration into lasting change. The journey ahead would test every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and unity humanity had mustered, but the rewards promised to be worth the struggle. As weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of Earth's actions became impossible to ignore. The coalition forged during the negotiations began to grow, drawing in oppressed civilizations from across the galaxy. These were worlds that had suffered under the Empire's rule for generations, worlds where freedom was little more than a distant dream. Now inspired by Earth's example, they dared to hope again. Humanity took on the role of both ally and mentor, sharing technology, resources, and strategies with its newfound partners. Engineers traveled to distant planets, helping local populations build defenses tailored to their unique environments. Scientists collaborated on projects aimed at countering Imperial advancements, pooling knowledge that spanned light years. Even artists and storytellers joined the effort, using their crafts to spread messages of resistance and solidarity. Together, and these disparate groups formed a patchwork alliance united by a shared vision, a galaxy free from tyranny. But the road to liberation wasn't easy. The Galactic Empire fought back with everything it had, launching campaigns designed to crush dissent before it could take root. Entire star systems were blockaded, their economies strangled until they submitted to Imperial control. Resistance leaders were targeted, their movements tracked and eliminated with brutal efficiency. Yet despite these efforts, the Empire's grip continued to weaken. Its once unquestioned authority was eroding, undermined by internal strife and external pressure. Back on Earth, life carried on amidst constant vigilance. Orbital defense platforms remained active around the clock, scanning for any sign of Imperial incursions. Fleets of warships patrolled the edges of Terran space, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Civilians adapted to this new reality, finding ways to thrive even as uncertainty loomed overhead. Gardens sprouted in urban centers, providing fresh produce in case supply lines were disrupted. Schools incorporated lessons on survival skills alongside traditional subjects, ensuring future generations would be prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Yet even in the midst of preparation, moments of humanity shone through. Communities came together to celebrate milestones, from birthdays to anniversaries, cherishing the connections that made life meaningful. Musicians performed concerts in public squares, their melodies lifting spirits and reminding everyone of what they were fighting for. The volunteers organized drives to support families affected by the ongoing conflict, proving that compassion could coexist with resilience. On the diplomatic front, Earth worked tirelessly to solidify its position as a leader among equals. Representatives traveled to neutral territories, forging alliances and negotiating trade agreements that strengthened the coalition's resources. They also reached out to factions within the Empire itself, appealing to those disillusioned by decades of exploitation and corruption. Slowly but surely, cracks widened within the Empire's ranks, as more and more individuals questioned whether loyalty to such a regime was worth the cost. One pivotal moment came when a high-ranking Imperial official defected, bringing with them classified information that exposed the Empire's darkest secrets. This whistleblower revealed plans for mass exterminations of rebellious populations, covert experiments on sentient beings, and schemes to destabilize entire regions for profit. The evidence was undeniable, and when it was broadcast across the galaxy, it sparked outrage on an unprecedented scale. Neutral factions that had previously remained silent now spoke out against the Empire, condemning its actions and pledging support to Earth and its allies. With public opinion shifting dramatically, the Empire found itself increasingly isolated. Its military might still pose a formidable threat, but morale among its troops plummeted as doubts about their cause spread. Soldiers began questioning orders, refusing to carry out missions they deemed unjust. Some even deserted, seeking refuge with the coalition. Where the once mighty machine of oppression was grinding to a halt, its gears clogged with dissent and despair. Finally, after years of tension and sporadic clashes, a tipping point arrived. A massive uprising erupted in one of the Empire's core territories, a region long considered untouchable. Fed up with centuries of exploitation, the population rose en masse, toppling statues, seizing government buildings, and declaring independence. The rebellion quickly gained momentum, spreading to neighboring systems and igniting a chain reaction that reverberated throughout the galaxy. Caught off guard, the Empire scrambled to respond, but its forces were stretched thin. Coalition fleets launched coordinated strikes, targeting key installations and cutting off supply lines. Stealth fighters infiltrated enemy strongholds, disabling critical infrastructure and sowing chaos behind the lines. On the ground, resistance fighters waged guerrilla warfare, striking swiftly and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. It was a symphony of strategy and sacrifice, orchestrated by humanity and its allies. As the dust settled, the outcome became clear. The Galactic Empire, once an unstoppable juggernaut, had been brought to its knees. Its leaders either surrendered or fled, leaving behind a power vacuum that needed to be filled. Humanity stepped forward not as conquerors but as stewards of a new era. Together with its coalition partners, Earth established a framework for governance based on principles of equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. Resources were shared fairly, cultures were celebrated rather than suppressed, and decisions were made collectively, ensuring no single voice held undue influence. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Rebuilding shattered worlds and healing wounded societies required patience and perseverance. But step by step, progress was made. Trade routes reopened, connecting distant corners of the galaxy in ways never before possible. Scientific breakthroughs accelerated, fueled by collaboration between species with diverse perspectives and talents. Art flourished, reflecting the rich tapestry of experiences that define this new galactic community. For humanity, the journey was far from over. Earth had taken its place among the stars, not as victims, but as pioneers. Its people looked outward with a sense of purpose, eager to explore uncharted territories and forge friendships with civilizations yet unknown. They understood that peace was not a destination, but a continuous process, one that demanded vigilance, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And so, the story of Earth's defiance came full circle. What had begun as a desperate bid for survival evolved into a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. Humanity had proven that even the smallest voices could spark monumental change when united by a common cause. The days of bowing to the Galactic Empire were gone forever, replaced by a future shaped by courage, unity, and the unyielding spirit of exploration. As ships departed Earth's orbit, bound for distant horizons, the planet below stood as a testament to what was possible when ordinary people dared to dream of something greater. The galaxy watched, inspired by the tale of a small, stubborn world that refused to give up, and in doing so changed everything.